Hi, it's Darren again. Want to do a video around running how to create a really solid rushing attack. I'm going to use Washington State as an example of this. For those of you who have been around the SNCFL, you know that Washington State has largely dominated the running game, probably for a while now. I don't remember exactly when I made the switch over, but if we go back here and we look at rushing attack, you'll notice I think I installed this rushing game largely when Sylvester graduated, so it was 2047 was when I installed it. And since then, there's only been one season where they weren't the uh, leaders in rushing attack. So a lot of things go into how to build a solid running attack. So the first thing is coaches. A lot of you probably are sick of me saying this, but coaches matter when it comes to offense strategy nowadays, and you really need to think about your coaching staff. So when you look at my team, Paul Johnson, I originally hired him because I had a thought that I was going to go to a running attack, mostly because when I first took Washington State, they had a quarterback named Albert Sylvester, who I think now plays in the WWPF. But anywho, um, he was a good running and passing quarterback, so I was like, well, I should do something with running. And that started it. And then, of course, he graduated, and I didn't have a good quarterback behind him, so I needed to really come up with something else. So Johnson's been the coach for Washington State for a long time, but I kept him on because he was a power hybrid. Uh, he likes running from three wide receiver sets, and I do that, by the way. But he's not big on passing. My offensive coordinator has changed so many times, it's not even funny. But I brought in a West Coast guy this season because I want to do more outside running. Traditionally, I've been doing balanced, and you'll find out why I do balanced a lot in a minute. And Frankie kind of touched on this during the podcast a few weeks back. Is if you're going to run counters, balanced is important because balance is the single hardest form of running to defend against, because a balanced running game could go outside, could go inside, it could be power. It makes it really hard to game plan against that because when you game plan, you can only choose inside, outside, power, which is something I'm going to bring up to Wolverine Studios, by the way. You really should have something that says more like balanced, um, because the problem with balance, like counters, is that they're not really an inside or an outside run. They are in the middle, and there's nothing to really defend against that. You can't do inside running. Anywho, so I brought in Michael because he had outside runs. My previous coordinator was now a head coach. The previous coordinator before that's a head coach. It just keeps happening. Michael's probably not going to stay on, by the way, uh, because I'm going to try to get a better coach in the off season. But the first thing that you want to do is if you're creating a rushing attack is you want to look at your team. So quarterbacks, this depends on if you want to do an option attack. So I don't do a lot of option. I don't have really the quarterbacks for it. I kind of do in one of them, but most of my quarterbacks are actually more throwing quarterbacks, and I did that intentionally. So if I was going to do the whole I want to run the ball, I'd be putting Overby in a lot, and he would be the person running it, but he doesn't have a good arm. He's accurate, and I could get away with it. But back to the intelligence thing is I couldn't do RPOs because he's not very bright. But because I recruited Leo McCauley, uh, I pretty much have scrapped that idea because I'm like, I'm just going to throw the ball, let McCauley throw it occasionally, and I'm going to focus on just running with my running backs, which has traditionally been what I did. Now, I did have 1,000-yard rusher as a quarterback a few seasons back, um, and I did run the option pretty heavily. But that was because that guy had like 90 speed and he had hands like 50. He was like a running back. Um, I don't advocate, unless you're going to do it as a freshman and then redshirt them, taking a running back and making them a quarterback so you can create an option attack. I think that there's enough quarterbacks out there that have good running traits that you can go get one of them instead. um, it just doesn't end well because likely they're going to have to throw the ball, and if they don't have an arm, they don't have accuracy, they have no skill, it's just going to end poorly for you. So the what I'm going to show you today is more of a rushing first, a running back focused rushing attack as opposed to an option attack. So uh, you want to have diversity in your running backs. You want to have people who can go inside, outside, and everywhere in between. So I have that with this. My main running back is Ricky Merriman. We look at him real quick, he's a two-star. He's one of the ones I scoured the whole recruiting screens to find and managed to find him. And he's pretty solid. He is definitely an outside running threat. He has decent agility. He has the strength that he can actually go inside. And I do run him inside. His hands aren't great, but they're solid, and he's got good endurance, and he's got really good skill as a running back. So um, he's definitely someone who I'm pretty high on. He is a prototypical running back for my system, which is I want speed, agility, strength, hands in that order. Intelligence is great. I've talked about this a few times now. Skill is non-negotiable. You should really get skill. It's just a basic fundamental. Uh, but again, because I like to run in and out, um, speed is for the outside, agility is for really kind of inside, strength is for power rushing, and then intelligence is just knowing where the holes are and being able to get to them. So as you can see, he definitely is my outside runner. Although, again, like I said, he can take the ball inside. He's just a phenomenal get. My inside runner is more of Willis, who was a four-star, uh, who's also had a pretty phenomenal year. He's fast. He's got more solid hands. He's again smart. He's got really good agility for going inside and making cuts. Now he's not as strong as I'd like him to be, but he's still solid. And if you look at him again, that's pretty good stats for a running back. Um, Anthony Colborne has traditionally been my third back. He's a change of pace back for me again. He's also the person I'd like to give the ball to in the red zone. Now, he didn't feature this year that much because Willis and Merriman were sucking up all the carries. Um, but again, he has decent speed. He's got really solid hands. His agility's high and he's got good strength. 63 for a running back is good strength. 70 is a bruiser. 80, of course, is just like a Tim Allstott who's just going to mow you down. I like Coburn a lot. I kind of wish I would have been able to get him more into the offense this year. But what I noticed is just Merriman and Willis were having breakout seasons, and I needed to. He's going to probably go to WWPF. He is an all-purpose back, so I do use him in the passing game. But as you can see, he had a really solid career before this last season when he got parked because Merriman and Willis ate up all the carries. I do use Porter Bell for short yardage scenarios. He's not very fast, but again, solid hands. He's got decent agility, he's got decent strength, and I can put him up the middle. Now, the next big thing is fullbacks do matter in this offense. So you want to have fullbacks who can block. I don't really focus a lot of times on fullbacks who can run the ball, although I think that they do occasionally. But I also wanted really strong. So for my system, normally it's going to be strength, um, intelligence, and then the ability to block. And again, skills non-negotiable. So Edmund Dean's been starting a lot for them. He's highly strong. He's got good speed, but really it's the run blocking at 65 that kind of attracts me to him, and he's got solid skills. So he's definitely that. Now, if I want to start throwing the ball, I will likely put Shell in. Shell can do a lot of fullback flies because he's pretty fast and he's got decent hands. His agility sucks, but that's not why he's on the field. But Dean is more of your prototypical type of fullback that you want in this system. So again, you're going to prioritize strength, intelligence, and blocking. Really, it's strength and blocking, and then intelligence, and then again, skills non-negotiable. When you look at the guards, so because running can be so diverse, speed matters as much as agility and strength. Now, the first caveat I'm going to give you is I traditionally am a person who puts less weight on strength. I put more weight on blocking skills and more weight on speed and agility. Now, this team's going to look a little different than what you normally see because I do have to diversify a lot in order to be able to pull the running attack off. I really don't care about pass blocking. Pass blocking is secondary to me. Now, I've been fortunate enough, I've been managed to get a couple people who are good at both. But when you look at who are the top people for me in the system, Bruce Gibbs is someone I'm really high on. And the reason is he's strong. I'm sorry. He's got decent strength. He's not strong, but he's agile, he's smart, he's fast, and he's got really good run blocking skills. So for me, what that matters as guard is I do a lot of pulls because I do a lot of counters, I do a lot of slams, I do things where the guards are moving. So he's got to have speed to get there in the deal with speed rushers, and he's got to have at least some strength to be able to hit a linebacker and knock a linebacker over. And that's my thought process at guard is I'm not trying to take on the defensive tackles dead on, other than through technique. I'm really trying to take on linebackers because my hope is that he's going to the second layer and he can hit the person there. The other person that I value very highly is I have played quite a bit with Jeffrey. Lyman sees the field as well. Both of these are more strong, so I tend to line them up on the side where I have a defensive tackle who's strong. Um, both of them have decent speed. Intelligence is good, not great, but both of them are really good blockers as well. So, someone asked about size. Most of my guards tend to be under 300 pounds. And again, it's because I'm looking for faster guards because I know they're going to pull, because I run a lot of counter. I need for them to be able to move. And that's why I put an emphasis on speed. I don't really put as big of an emphasis on agility, but if I can get agility, it's nice. But for the system I run, traditionally, it's going to be blocking skill, speed, strength, agility. And intelligence is somewhere around speed, between speed and agility. Uh, but Gibbs is, I'm high on Gibbs. He's done a phenomenal job. He doesn't miss. So when you look at those stats, in the passing game, you're traditionally going to look at sacks allowed versus pancakes. In the running game, you really want to look at missed blocks. If a guy's missing a lot of blocks, you probably don't want him playing. So if you notice Hill, and of course Jeffrey was hurt for a while, but Jeffrey doesn't miss a whole lot of blocks, which is why I'm pretty high on him. Um, Lyman Lyman misses more blocks than I want him to, so I'll have to figure that out at some point. But um, that's kind of how I look at tackles again, because I go off tackle a lot. I need people who have again speed. Um, so I'm going to prioritize speed, but again, run blocking means the most to me. Speed, strength, agility, and again, intelligence is kind of like skill to me. It's kind of non-negotiable. I like smart linemen more than I like strong linemen. Um, and if you look at these guys, is I've got two really strong run blockers. So very fast, kind of smart, good agility, decent strength. He plays on the side I predominantly run against. He plays on the side that I predominantly am going to pass from, or that I will run less against. Or in the cases where I do the game planning and I notice that they got a bull rusher on one side and a speed rusher on the other, I'm traditionally going to put him on the speed rusher side and put him on the bull rusher side because he's going to stack up a little bit better. And again, if you look at this, this is just a phenomenal stat line, by the way, for Kaufman, is no sacks allowed, and he hasn't missed a block. And again, this is back to that theory and that system, right? Which is he's smart, he's got good skill, He's very strong. He has decent agility, but he's a phenomenal blocker. I think Eisen is in the same boat. Eisen gives up sacks, and I'm okay with it, but I don't throw the ball very often. But he also has matured into a player who doesn't miss blocks. And in this system, it's very crucial that you find players who don't miss blocks. Even if they have great stat lines, if you find a player who has maybe less, but they're not missing blocks, you want to put that player in. Missed blocks equal just losing yards in most cases. Um, at center, again, I am going to prioritize the run blocking. I believe Molina's my starter. And Molina is a really good center. At center is the one position where I actually try to put size. So he's very strong because he's going to line up against a nose tackle or some form of defensive tackle most of the time, and I'm going to need strength. Center is the one area where I will prioritize strength higher than speed. But he's still fast. He's smart. He's got great run blocking skills. He's got great skill. So this is the cornerstone of my offense. It starts with the line. If you don't have a good line, you're going to struggle with the running game, especially the type I run, which is more speedy and cutback type running games. Wide receivers and tight end do matter. Someone asked me about that. So I do prioritize having people who can run block. So Combs and Sparkman are typically my run blocking tight ends, mostly because they have decent stats in run blocking and decent stats to be able to do blocking. Again, they're speedy, uh, they're traditionally smart. Bivens, I go back and forth on Bivens. I like Bivens, but what I've noticed is when I have him in the running game, he gets obliterated because of his strength, because he's going against a linebacker or a defensive end who may just toss him. Wide receiver does matter. You want to have good run blockers at wide receiver, and make sure you got a few of them that you can put into run packages. So Hazel, Mack, Thompson are traditionally the ones who find themselves on the field when I'm running the ball. Um, Even though he's not a great run blocker, I do put Patterson on, but I make sure the plays I choose are not running towards Patterson because he's not going to help in any way, shape, or form. Generally speaking, Thompson's on the field almost always, so I'm going to run at Thompson because he can actually block and get people out of the way. Same with Hazel and Mack. This is just, you don't normally find wide receivers who have 91 speed and have 31 block. I actually played with making him a tight end at different points, but I chose not to because I needed him in the wide receiver core. So that's kind of how you build your roster, right? Um, is choose the style of running you want to do. In mine, I do both outside and inside, a lot of balance type runs. So I need to have linemen who are fast, agile, strong, and smart. Um, Running back wise, I need to have a combination of agility, strength, and speed, and I can get it in multiple players. It doesn't have to be one. And then the fullback, I want people who can block first, but also who are fast enough to get to where they need to get. Because again, the fullback's got to be able to go as fast as the running back in some cases. And then at wide receiver, I do value run blocking because they do a lot of run blocking for me. So when we look at the strategy, by the way, Stuart, I am going to change this before our game. So traditionally, I am a one pretty much down the board. And what that means is I'm saying run the ball every single time. I don't want you throwing the ball like ever. Now, I've changed that up this season because I have McCauley. McCauley's a really good quarterback, and I actually have 3 to 4 wide receivers who actually can do something. So I will maybe make these 30 on the downs. I want to have the potential to throw, but traditionally I'm a one. And consequently, if you just want to throw the ball all the time, you'd make this 99. Tarkov was Wazoo is my base offense. It has been for seasons. It does change every year. Now, something I do that the reason why you see Paul Johnson here is there are times where I want to see what my coach thinks, so I'll flick it. and then I'll see what he's coming up with because I trust him because he's actually a good offensive game planner. But then I'll go back and say, okay, anything less than a 50 is a 1. I'll let that stay at 60. And then I'll look at it and then I'll decide whether I like it or not. And then I'm just going to flick those back on because I don't believe in that. I'm not talking about defense today. Now, again, here's where your actual plays matter. So, uh, attitude is interesting with a rushing attack. I tend to play balanced or conservative. I don't tend to play aggressive. I don't want to go for it on fourth down if I'm running the ball all the time. I don't want to do certain things. So if you're aggressive, you're going to go for it on fourth down. You're going to try to kick longer field goals. You're going to do a lot of things I don't like to do. So in this regard, with a running attack, I'm going to be a little bit more balanced or conservative. My focus is run. I use slower tempo because I don't want my players getting tired faster. So I would say if you're going to run the ball, really focus on slow or very slow. Whereas when passing the ball, you probably want to go fast or very fast. I'm big on not setting passing preferences nowadays. It's just something I've started doing more and more. One of the reasons is I began to realize I was tipping a lot of times by my passing preferences. Uh, Third down back, normally you want them to be a person that has good hands, good speed, good agility, because they are potentially going to catch the ball. So this would traditionally be Anthony Coburn. It's Timothy Willis because he's kind of equitable. Goal line back is your bruiser. You want them to have the strength, the agility. Speed is good in hands. Merriman has all those things, so he's a natural fit. Now, this is what I was talking about. This determines the type of runs you do or your coordinator is going to call. So if you choose inside, they're going to go inside. So it's going to be a lot of draws. I'm sorry, draws a bad example. It'll be a lot of just straight up the middle, dives and things like that. Maybe some slams. Outside will be sweeps, pitches. Powell will be there. I forget what the Powell ones are, but slams, misdirections, things like that, or Powell type running things. Three wide receiver set just means that it's going to choose a three wide receiver set and run out of that. Draws, of course, are draws. Balanced is traditionally going to be things like counters or any of the type of plays. So I run balanced a lot because I want to use all the plays in my playbook. If you don't want to set a preference and you just want the coordinator to call whatever, just choose none. And that's okay here actually. But I use this based on my opponent. So in the last game, in the previous game that I played, I actually had it set to outside because I was going to try to attack Stewart on the outside, and I think he probably sniffed that out and blocked me. Whereas against Stewart this time, I was like, I'm going balanced. I always leave this as mixed. You can choose what you want here. Again, none. I don't do backfield by committee. It doesn't work. Tight end role, I do mix because I do throw the ball. Um, and when we get into formations, you'll notice very quickly is I do use formations. I use this largely within depth to rotate my running backs. So someone asked, and people keep complaining about this. If you're losing games in the third and fourth quarter, one of the things you probably need to really start looking at is, are you rotating your players? If you're not rotating your players frequently, they're going to get tired. So by the third and fourth quarter of the game, it's why so many teams collapse in this game, is because you get to the third and fourth quarter, their endurance is exceeded, they're tired, and now the other team is just going to run over you, especially if it's someone like me who's constantly rotating his players. So I don't rotate linemen. To me, I just don't want to do that. And you can see here linemen and Gibbs, Kaufman and Eisen are the guys, and Molina. Um, but again, this is also set in a weird way because I need to fix it. This isn't what I actually am going to go with against UCLA. But one of the things here is, if you notice, default offense is a rushing attack. Offensive package 3 is a rushing attack, and here you see that I'm rotating the running backs. Now, in theory, before the UCLA game, I actually had Colburn here and I had Merriman Hill because I wanted Merriman to get a break. In Hill, I actually had Colburn Hill and Willis Hill because Willis is going to come in on the third one as the starter. I wanted to keep rotating him. Uh, So again, rotation is key. You should be rotating your wide receivers. You should be rotating your running back, rotate your tight ends. And then you'll notice that when I go to offensive packages, normally I'm going to change things up. You see Colburn come in on passing downs and so forth. But strategy-wise, I'll show you the playbook. It does change, so I'm not too worried about showing this to you. And I've actually given this to a couple people before, so Tarkov Wazoo is my playbook. And what I'm normally doing is I'm looking at plays and then I'm reducing them. But let's focus on the running plays. So as you can see is I've got pretty good average gains across the board. This one I'm probably going to remove out of the system. I thought I did actually, but I didn't apparently. But so I run multiple formations: I formation, pro set, shotgun, spread, and 2 tight ends. I don't do wishbone. It's just not something I've ever done. But as you can see here, is I do a lot of running to the left. Will the strength of my line is, but I counterbalance it with things to the right because I don't want someone catching the fact that I'm going left a lot. And I do go left a lot, by the way. But Washington State, one of the things I've done with them is I dare you to stop me. And I've largely been successful even when people stack the left. And the reason why I go left is the plays on the defensive side for, I think it's under, is the counterpart, is they're not very good. And especially with the linemen I have, I can typically blast the line off of the line and get to the linebackers and just get past them uh, with what I do. But again, one of the things for me is I like running off tackles, again, because I'm relying on the strongest part of my line. I do run pitches, which means that this wide receiver's got to be a good blocker because when I pitch it, they're going to be blocking. Uh, Someone once said that all I do is run counters. That's, as you can see, it's not true. I don't just run counters. But because I choose balanced, it allows me to be able to run off tackles and counters a lot, which you can see by the numbers, by the way. And if ever you're not sure what a thing is, you can just click on the play and you see run type outside. If you go back to game planning, that means that if you were to choose outside hill, what it would mean is when you go back to the actual playbook, it will choose those type of plays. So I think it was pitch. So that means pitch would be the predominant play you would call along with anything else that has the outside. So like QB sweep option left. Was balanced, I'm going to do the off tackle left. You'd run sweeps. Um, Again, I'm running options a lot of times and sweeps. So I do a lot of sweeps options for my outside running. I do a lot of off tackle and counters. I do have a playbook that I'm not showing because I intend to use that against UCLA. And if I were to show it, it would kind of give Stewart a little bit of an advantage over me, which I don't want to do. Uh, Jet sweeps, again, you can see are an outside run. Blast is inside. Counter we talked about is balance. Dives are inside. Duos are balanced. Duos, I like it, but I haven't got it to work yet. I got to figure it out. Sam Crack is, of course, a power running base. So this is just the easiest way for you to see what are the different options and what do they manage. Like a wheel crack is um, a running play. And salmon wheel is a linebacking term for those of you who don't really follow football. So it's saying who the fullback is going to smack, essentially. Um, but I think the key here is to find the running plays that work for you and then use them. So with Tarkov Razoo, I start the season every year with it, and then I see what's working, what's not, and then I will remove something if I don't think it's working. In that case, I'm removing it because I'm below 4 yards per carry. Traditionally, my measuring stick for really healthy running attack is anything less than 4 needs to get removed. Now, if I were to show you Texas Tech, it doesn't look this clean. Um, and I'll show you Texas. No, I won't. But traditionally, what I would say is run multiple formations. Put your best blockers on one side. If you've got 2 sets of really good blockers, you can go left or right. And then make a decision is against your opponent. If you notice that they're weak at defensive tackle and an interior linebacker, run up the gut, which means run inside. So you would change these plays up to be plays that would be good against the inside. The beauty of the balanced plays in many regards is because the CPU doesn't know if it's an inside or an outside run, it's going to treat it. It may be able to stop it if it's an outside and you're choosing what's like an option like this one. The CPU would be able to stop this if it's set for outside run because it's going to mirror an outside run. But when you get into counters, and again, despite popular belief, I don't just run counters. Um, this one's more of an inside run, so if they're set to outside run, this is just going to obliterate them. So that's kind of how I run Washington State's rushing offense. I have the coaches who like running the ball, who run the ball in the way I like. Uh, I then have built a roster that focuses on speed and blocking on the line. And I've brought in wide receivers who can block as well as tight ends. And then it really starts with the play selection as I do a lot of ones for to ensure that I'm running the ball all the time. And then I will change up my game planning based on my opponent to say if I notice that you're weak on the inside, I'm going inside. If you're weak on the outside, I'm going outside. Otherwise, I'm going to go to balanced. I don't really do power because then I got to change up my whole playbook to focus on Powell. I could do it. And then, of course, I'm alternating my running backs constantly to keep them fresh so that way they go longer. And consequently, on defense, if you want to, um, by the way, again, Stuart, I'm going to change this up. If you want to keep your defense fresh, you need to rotate them. So constantly saying, making sure that you have different people in, as you notice, is defensive package 3 is a different one for me, but I switched up my defensive linemen, except for some people who have high endurance, or I just don't really have a good person behind them and I want them to stay on the field. I don't really rotate my safeties, by the way. That probably is one of the reasons why I struggle a little bit late in the game against long passing. But that's how you build a running attack. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'll probably try next week to focus on uh, talking about passing attack again. This time more focused on what I would call run and shoot. So again, if you like the video, but if you want me to talk about a particular topic, let me know. I will also say that if you have thoughts about this game and what you'd like it to look like, definitely let me know as well. I give a lot of feedback to Brooks, and uh, I will say, I can't speak enough about Brooks. And I'm not a fanboy, by the way. I will just say that every time I've ever interacted with him, and I've had some issues with the league from time to time, Brooks has always been solid with listening to that feedback, giving his thoughts, and then addressing the feedback. as fast as he can. So Wolverine Studios is a good software development house. I do recommend this game. If you want to join an online league, this is a good league. It's a friendly league, and I think you'd have a lot of fun. But that's it for now. Have a great weekend.